In this lesson we're going to both design and build a cube made out of steel. As you can see on this picture, we have a top view, a front view, a side view, and kind of a broken part view as well. The name of the drawing is Cube of Doom, or the name of the project is Cube of Doom, and each part is going to be 1/8 inch mild steel. So in the top view here, you can see each part is labeled. We have part 3, which is right there, another part 3, and then part 1 here, another part 1 here, and then part 2 is going to fit inside of part 1 and part 3. This would be the front view. So if you were looking at it from the front here, you would only see this part 1. And from the side view, if you were looking at this direction, part 3, you would see these seams where part 3 and part 1 come together. So we're going to use Autodesk Inventor to do the design work, and I'm going to start out by just creating a new part. So whenever I create a new part number 1, whenever I choose my sketch, I'm going to be very careful to pick the planes that I want them to actually appear on, so I don't have to worry about rotating the individual parts whenever they're in the assembly. So I'm going to start out with part number 1, and part number 1 is going to be drawn on this XY plane. So I choose that plane, I grab a rectangle, I start at the little yellow dot, and I just come out here, and I can see my part number 1 is 3 by 3. So I type in 3, tab 3, and it automatically makes it that size on the screen. And I can type in finish sketch, click the finish sketch button, and if I hit the extrude button, the extrusion defaults to 1 inch, so I'm just going to make this 0.125 for my 1/8 inch thick mild steel, and I say OK. And right now part 1 is done. So I can save this, I can do a save as, and I'm inside my Cube of Doom project. I'm going to call it part number 1. And then I'm going to come out here and I'm going to do a new part again. So in this part, I'm going to pick the opposite. I'm going to actually switch to part number 3. And the last time I chose XY plane to work on. This time I'm going to work with my YZ plane. So I choose that, pick a rectangle, come out here, and I'm going to just show you something different. In case you choose the wrong dimension whenever you click it, you can also very easily put a dimension on there and let everything be driven by the dimensions. So part number 3 is 3 wide, or actually it's 2.75 wide, 2.75, and it is 3 high. So I just type in 3, enter, finish my sketch, zoom out, and I'm going to do the extrusion at 0.125 inches. I say OK, and again I'm going to save as part number 3. Next I'll do another part, and this part is going to be part number 2. So whenever I do my sketch this time, I'm going to choose this plane, the XZ plane, and I'm going to do a rectangle. I'll just use my middle wheel on my mouse to zoom out, and this is number 2. It is 2.75 by 2.75. tab, 2.75, enter, finish my sketch, extrude it, 0.125, enter, and now I have all three parts made. Once again, I'll save that as part 2 this time. Say save. And now I'm going to go back to File, and I'm going to do a new assembly. In this new assembly, I'm going to start out by getting the view oriented to the view that I want it to be in. So I'm going to place part number 2 in first. So I want to actually be looking at my top view. So I switch to my top view by clicking that little arrow. I'm in my top view right now, and I'm going to come over here and click the Place Component button. I'm going to choose part number 2. I'm going to say Open, and I'm going to drop it, zoom out, I'll drop another one in place, and I'm going to go ahead and say Escape. At this point, I want to basically select these. I want to change the look of these, because if I insert all 6 of these parts to this cube, and they're all these 1/8 inch thick gray looking parts, it's going to get real confusing very quickly. So I'm just going to go to my tools. I'm going to click on Appearance. I'm going to find a part in here, or color in here, that I can use. And I'll just go ahead and load that up to the top here. I just picked this first one, this purplish color, and then I can choose my 2 parts. I can click on that, and now I have these tiles. I could have used anything else as well. So if I wanted to use dark green, I can choose dark green, select my 2 tiles, hit the dark green, and there I have dark green for my part number 2. I'll close out of that. Next, I'm going to go to my front view, and I'm just going to pick this up and I'm going to move it over. It doesn't have to be exact, but I want it somewhat lined up. And then I'll click to my right view with my view cube, and I'll move that over, and I'm just going to click back to my front to see if it's semi-lined up. Looks good. So the next one that I'm going to drop in place is part number 1 or part number 3. So I'm going to go back to my Assemble tab, Place, and take part number 1. I'm going to open, and I don't want to drop it in this view because I'll be putting 2 on top of each other. So I'm going to switch views to my right side. I'm going to drop 1 there. I'm going to drop 1 there. Hit Escape. And once again, I'm going to go into my Tools, Appearance, and I'll pick, so we have a lot of contrast, I'll pick this canary color. Pick my 2 objects, choose canary, and now you can see, you can very clearly see the difference between those. These are number 2, and that one was part number, you can click on these, part number 1. So now I need to insert part number 3, so I'm going to go ahead and get that to the view that I want it to be in, which is this back, or I could do the front view. Go back to my Assemble tab, Place, and I'm going to choose part number 3. Open, click there, hit Escape. Once again, I'm going to go into my Appearance, and I'm going to choose something unique for those ones. Alright, there I have blue, yellow, and green. Close my materials or my Appearance palette. Now I need to start getting these things assembled, actually put together into one nice neat piece. So before I do anything, I want to ground one of the pieces. I'm going to ground my very first piece, this number 2 that's on the bottom. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to choose grounded. And you can see over here in the project browser that part number 2 is now pinned or grounded. Once you have all the pieces brought in, all the different parts brought in to the assembly drawing, now we can go through and constrain them. So we're going to go up to the Assemble tab and use the Constrain button, and we're going to focus on this area right here. We have 2 different options for the solutions. We have the mate and flush. So the mate is kind of like a perpendicular application, and the flush is where we have the 2 objects in the same plane, or you want the objects in the same plane. And these are just the first and second selections. So we're going to start out with our grounded part. So this part right here is grounded, and you can see that because there's a pin over here in the browser. So we're going to start out by doing a perpendicular or mate constraint, and I'm going to choose this face and that face, and then I'm going to say apply. The next one, I'm going to do a flush constraint, and again I'm going to choose the grounded part. It's the starting point, and then I'm going to choose this face here and say apply. And you can see those are constrained. So right now they're constrained. We can get out of that, and I can move this object in this direction, but that's the only direction that I can move it in, because it's constrained up and down by that, and I can't move it away from this part in any other direction but left to right. So the next thing is we could take a look at constraining that face to this face. So whenever we do this, we're going to use flush. We're going to choose that face first, and then that face. And now this is constrained. Now if I go look at the other side, you can see that it's lined up there as well. I don't think I would be able to constrain that to the other side because it would be over constrained. So the next one, I'm going to choose, I'll go ahead and do this other blue one here. We're going to constrain the mate, choose that face, then we're going to switch, or we're going to hit apply, we're going to choose the flush, choose that face and that face, and finally we're going to hit apply. I'll choose that face and that face, and now those are constrained just like on the other side. Alright, the next one we're going to do is one of these yellow ones. I'll say apply, and I'm going to go back to my mate one, or the perpendicular I like to call it. So we'll start out by choosing this face, and I'll have to zoom out and pick that face. I'll say apply. I'm going to pick the flush now. I'm going to choose the bottom of that with that one there, and then the last one is I'll have to align, I want to align it within here. So whenever I'm doing this, I have a couple different options for what I could do as far as a constraint. And let's see, I think what I want to do is flush, and have to hit apply from the last one. I'm going to hit flush. I'm going to choose this face and that face. And now you can see that it's lined up there. I'll say apply, go back to my mate option. I'm going to choose that face and that face, and then I'm going to choose hit apply. And right here, just messed up the last one that I did. I'm going to try doing an undo, and everything else is still constrained, so I'll go back to constrain. And well, before I show you that, I'll show you this over here. If I wasn't able to undo, I can also go back and I can go through all the different constraints that are applied in this project browser, and I could literally go through and delete those or modify them. Alright, so I'm going to look at this grounded constraint. And I'm going to constrain the mate, choose that, choose that one, say apply, I'll do a flush, and apply, another flush, and everything is all constrained except for this top one. Okay, so for this last one, I need to choose this perpendicular, and I'm going to choose the inside of this face and this face. I'll say apply. And next, I will choose this face and that face, apply, and finally I'll switch to flush. I'm going to choose that face and that face, hit apply, and now I have everything constrained together. And I can't move anything because everything is constrained to that grounded object. Once I have the cube assembled and constrained, the next step would be to actually do something with it as far as creating a drawing. So I can go to File, New, and create a new drawing. So in here, I don't want to use this size sheet. This is a pretty big size sheet. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on Sheet over here, Edit Sheet. I'm going to change this to size B. So like I said, the size B is 11 by 17. We're going to use landscape, and I'll just say OK. And there's nothing on the sheet to start with, so what I can do is I can start by putting a base view in. So I click this base view, and right now that is the front view of my cube. I say OK, and if it didn't find it automatically, you could go in and point to your Cube of Doom assembly. Right now, if I do this, it's going to be hidden line removed. I want to have this as shaded. I'm going to say OK, and then I can move it around if I want to as well. So I can also do projected views. So I will go ahead and project a view from the side and from the top, and we'll do a 3D view as well, and I need to right click and say create. Well, the only thing is these are pretty good sized to fit on the sheet. I'll try to make them work at this size. Drag this down here. I still need to get everything dimensioned as well. And we'll leave it like that to see if we can make it work. So after we have these on here, we can also throw some annotations on. So I'm going to click on the Annotate tab. I'm going to choose Dimension, and I'll start out with this one right here. Say OK. And I can do this side. And I will also do this one here. I could do the top view just to clarify if there's any confusion as far as the side and front view. And one more. I'm going to measure from that point to that point to get my 2.75. I might as well throw that one on as well. Okay, so now I have some dimensions on. I also want to throw a weld symbol on there. So go ahead and I think I'm just going to put one in this corner here. And click that again. Bring it out here. Say continue. And for this one, I want to have the weld symbol OFW. I say OK, and I've just added a weld symbol, and I could add more to that just to clarify that all those welds are the same. Just to help clarify, I can also go through and add a parts list. And I'm just going to stretch this in a little bit. And move it over here. Move my tutorial drawing down a little bit. And now you can see I have part 2, part 1, and part 3 quantity for each of them and the number. Also come in here and select different parts. And label them. Let me select the green one. I'm not doing a very good job of selecting the green one. 1, 2, and 3 labeled as well. And those correspond to these, so the part numbers don't correspond to the item number, but it still works as a parts list. Once I have this set up, the next thing to do would be to create a new sheet. Because I also want to add the single parts on here just so that you can show the size of those individually. I'm going to go to Place Views, click New Sheet. Now you can see this is 2 of 2. And I'm going to choose my base objects. I'm going to start with part number 1. Put that over here. I'm going to go ahead and annotate it. And I'd also like to have some leader text here. Maybe I'll just do text right here that says this is part 1. And I'm going to try underlining it. All caps, part 1. And I already have the quantity listed in another place. I'm just going to leave that out. So now, put that up there. I'm going to place view again, do my base. Instead of placing that view, I'm going to have flip it to the top so I can see that. And I'll say OK. I'll go ahead and place that there. I'll do some more text and underline that part 2. Well, just double click on them, highlight the text you want to change, 0.25. And now they stand out a little bit more. And lastly, I will go through and annotate, put the dimension. On there. Alright, the last thing that I'm going to do now that I have the drawings made is go to File, New, and we're going to do a presentation file. And I want to start with this Cube of Doom assembly.iam assembly. I'll open it. And now that this is in here, I can change, look at different views. What I want to do is I want an exploded view of this. So I can choose Tweak Components. I can select the components and I can drag them using this gizmo. I can drag them apart to show an exploded view, and maybe I want to do something slightly different. Maybe I want these to come in. I do like to show how that corner works, so I could switch to this one, bring it in a little bit, bring the top view down, and now I have an exploded view. So I can create a drawing view from that, and there's all kinds of different things that I can do with this. I could make an animation, a video animation. I could look at it from different visual styles. I could add lighting. For this very, very basic presentation, we're just going to leave it like this, and we're going to create the drawing view. I'm going to put my base view in. And I'm just going to say OK for now. And drop this in the middle, and I can double click on this view. I can change it to the shaded view. I can also look at it from different perspectives. There's the one that I had on my screen. I can also bump up the scale. And these balloons, to the drawings. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. And that's the completed set of drawings, all the different parts, the assembly, the part drawings, the exploded view.